indulgence as we were getting everybody pushed back, getting quorums, getting copies run. And we'll call the meeting to order of the Senate Committee on Retirement, February 28, 2023. And Senator Walker, we'll turn it over to you at this time, and you're Senator Hart. Yes, sir. Would you do a prayer? Sure.
Pray with me, please. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for today, Lord. We thank you for loving us. We thank you for the gift of salvation. We thank you for the opportunity, Lord, to hear these bills and to do good work on behalf of the people of Georgia. As we go about this meeting, we just ask that you grant us wisdom and discernment, Lord. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Carry on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I'm here to present to you Senate Bill 240, and it's a committee sub LC 432715S. We have in prior meetings talked about the public school employees retirement system and the low, really the low amount of money that those employees get if they in their retirement, and we've had discussions with other legislators too, other senators, and there's an interest in the Senate, I think, to survey our school districts to determine which ones are, in addition to PSERS, are paying their Social Security, including those employees that are under PSERS, the school bus drivers and the cafeteria workers, et cetera, if they're including them in the Social Security program. So this substitute would require Mr. Potvin or the agency, the state agency, which is the ERS state agency, to survey our school districts and find out if they are including those employees under Social Security, and if not, if they're including them in another plan, qualified retirement plan. So that's what line 62 through 69 does. And then lines 70 to 78 would require those districts that are not participating with those employees in the Social Security program to start doing that. So that's what the bill does. I met with Mr. Potvin and some of his people, and on line 62 we asked him to give us the report by July 1st of 2023, the report back to us what he found out from his survey of the school districts. I think a more realistic target for that would be September 1. If you all would entertain an amendment to change that to September 1, but otherwise, I think I'd appreciate. I'm happy to answer any questions and discuss this, but I would appreciate a, move to pass vote on this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And we have a letter that it's not a fiscal bill. So from the Georgia Department of Audits and Accounts, from Greg Griffin, State Auditor, that Mr. Potvin, would you care to comment? Would you care to come up and comment or anything? I do want to offer you that opportunity, sir, if you'd like.
Thanks. I'll just say that, I appreciate the opportunity to be involved in the conversation. I appreciate the extra time for getting the survey complete. That is a bit of a chore to collect that data. I think we're going to learn a lot from it, and I'm looking forward to seeing if we can figure out a way to expand coverage to these people.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any member have any questions? Yes, ma'am. Senator Harrell.
If you're going to change the date on line
Use your
six-
microphone, please.
If you're gonna change the date on line 62 to September, would you then not need to change some other dates, like maybe on line 75?
It's a good catch. I would think so.
I agree.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, where would you like to change it to?
The same.
September
same.
1.
So we're amending that from July to September? Is that what you said?
Yes.
If y'all are agreeable to it,
You need to
also be
change
on
it.
line 62 and on line 75. September 1, 2023, and
And then line 70, do you think October gives you enough time?
We're talking about December for that day. Would you mind changing
that would, I don't mind to change it, no, sir.
Yeah, I think we would appreciate an extension to December on that one.
Okay.
December,
December on that one?
Would you like to do December 31 or?
December 31st, yeah, or January 1st would be fine.
January 1st,
Yeah.
2024?
Yeah.
Okay, we need that in the form of a motion to amend the bill.
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we amend Senate Bill 40 LC 432715S by changing on line 62, striking July and inserting September. And then on line 70, striking October 1st, 2023, and inserting instead January 1st, 2024. And on line 75, striking July and inserting instead September.
okay. So noted. So we have a motion by Senator Harrell and a second by Senator Harbin. Any discussion? All in favor of the amendment, vote aye. Any opposed? So carry. So now we have amended Senate Bill 240, so we'll entertain a motion on that bill as amended.
At this appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
Okay, now would be the present time.
I make a motion to pass on SB, substitute SB 240 LC 432715S as amended.
Have a motion? Second? Okay, Senator Davenport by second, thank you. Any discussion, any questions? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? So carried. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Bobbin. We have a couple of people that wanted to speak on that, Lisa Morgan and Josh, excuse me, I got ahead of it, but I guess y'all are okay with it because you were in favor of it anyway.
Thank you for.
So it just saved you some time, thank you. Oh, well.
I did that already.
Okay. All right. You want to go present your 266 for us? All right, Senator Harbin, we'll let you present your substitute 266 LC 432725S.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. If you will, I want to talk a little bit about retirement plans, and our state has done a phenomenal job in managing retirement plans, things of that nature. If you look in your file folder, there is an article from the Wall Street Journal. It's got a building on the front you might want to look at. And this is an article about the state of California, specifically their California Public employees' retirement system. One of the things that the article addresses is kind of their lackluster performance, basically because of some of the ways that they've invested their money from that standpoint. We're going to talk a little bit about fiduciary responsibilities, but not tied to political or social agendas, and that's one of the things that California has been dealing with, and there's been several articles out on them from that standpoint, but that's in your file. 17 states around the country have already limited or banned the use of, and if you use the word ESG, if you will, environmental, social, and governance issues, where you're requiring investments not based upon a fiduciary standard, but because of a political or social position that they take. Florida has done that, and some other states as far as that. There's also a copy in your file of the General Statement of Investment Policies. That is the current one for the state of Georgia. It is the Employees Retirement Plan of Georgia that is done by the Board of Trustees. Good document as far as this, and understanding that a retirement plan will post their investment policy. It's kind of an outline of what their guidelines are of what they're going to invest and how they're investing, and this is their policy. If you look at the first page and go to the third paragraph, the fiduciary should select all investment services pecuniary based solely on the pecuniary interest of the ultimate beneficiaries of the plan. As a fiduciary, I am to look at the best for not me, but for what's best for the retirees and those people that are in that plan. I have a fiduciary responsibility and fiduciary liability. If you look in the fourth line, it says the trustees may subordinate the interest of the participants, or excuse me, may not subordinate the interest of the participants and the beneficiaries to other objectives, and may not sacrifice investment returns or increase risk in promotion of any non-pecuniary interests. Pecuniary interests do not include the furtherances of social, political, or ideology interests. That's in our current policy that we have in place right now from an investment standpoint. And another major part that's in the back, if you look towards the back, is proxy vote. Proxy vote is that they have a vote when they invest in something. They have an ability to vote. And here it says it is the fiduciary's responsibility of the trustees of the Employee Retirement System of Georgia to vote all proxies solely and exclusively in the best economic interest of the retirement system. And the last part, and standing exceptions to the policy of voting and management, is to allow votes in favor of confidential proxy balloting is determined to be in the best interest of the retirement systems. What you will find, the best interest issue is all the way through. It should be for the best interest of the retirees, not that it benefits any other organization or that. So that is the current status that's there. We're working off, if you will, in the file, we're working off LC 432725S. There's also a letter in the file, and Greg, I don't know if you want to come up and talk on your letter at all. Do you need to do that?
Was that the letter from the state auditor?
Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, the letter just reflects that the bill is amended to become a non-physical.
Non-physical is what this is, correction there. So that portion. So what the bill does, and if you'll look at your bill, and starting in lines really 2 through 4, it says Public Retirement System Investment Authority Law, so as to provide a fiduciary duty to invest retirement assets solely in the financial interest of participants and their beneficiaries, and basically to provide the duties that go along with being the fiduciary. And what they're doing is taking policy that we currently have an investment policy in place, and we're bringing that into law, that is the law as well as their policy from that standpoint. Also looking at lines 14, 15, the codes using retirement plan administrations in any person with respect to the retirement system. 37 through 40 addresses again not subordinating the interest of the participants or their beneficiaries, or sacrificing investment returns, or accepting increases in investment risk in the promotion of any non-pecuniary interest. Such pecuniary interest shall include but shall not be limited to or the furtherance of any social, political, or ideology interest. And what the bill really is doing is to protect and make sure that we're using a sole fiduciary standard and that it's not going to allow our investment dollars that's being held for our retirement and for our teachers and for our retired workers. It should not be a political issue that's making that decision. It should be a decision that produces the highest return with the least amount of risk. And so that's really what the bill does.
Okay.
Okay?
Anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Do we have somebody from Letch Council here?
Do what?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm,
Yes.
that's why I got my coffee. Quick question about the breach of fiduciary duty. Do we need a cross-reference on that to some sort of a statute that provides generally for the tort? Or do you have confidence that just kind of putting liable for BFD in there solves, because my understanding is that, I mean, this is supposed to tie into a private cause of action, is my understanding, right?
I did not tie it into the private cause of action. I believe the Attorney General would be tasked with enforcing the provisions of this.
Okay, so this is not intended for a beneficiary to be able to bring a cause of action to enforce the
Right.
fiduciary duty. It's just the AG?
That's my understanding.
Okay, just wanted clarity on that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions? Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this or testify? Let's see, Senator Walker?
So, I should keep my mouth shut probably because I'm so ignorant about this, but if it is the duty of the Attorney General to enforce this, does he not represent the state employment retirement system?
And
So how would that work?
Join in.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the senator raises a really good point, and I'll use by way of example our Open Records Act as an example of another place in the law where we have kind of an issue where the Attorney General is tasked with defending all state agencies in litigation. That's one of the most foundational tasks or job descriptions of the AG. But the AG is also tasked with enforcing certain provisions that might be used against state agencies. For example, in the Open Records Act, there's a misdemeanor, right? And that creates a conflict where the AG is effectively unable to enforce the Open Records Act against state agencies because of the way that that statutory scheme was designed. So I think to the senator's point, and if you can put my trial lawyer instincts to the side for just a second, I heard your point of personal privilege this morning and took it to heart and saw your hand out. So I'm with full respect to that.
Understand.
I mean, it might be appropriate to have a private cause of action to enforce the fiduciary duty, because otherwise, to the senator's point, you may lack enforcement if there is a breach, unless we've got another idea.
Yes, sir. Mr. Potvin, would you like to come up to the table?
I knew we would bring you into this.
Tried to say
I know. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Senator, with all due respect to your idea, if we went forward with that, we would see a lot of frivolous lawsuits every time we had a negative planned investment return. There's just no getting around the fact that some years are going to be good years and some years are not. And you're opening us up to potential punishment for any time that the market turns against us, and I don't see how we can support that.
Well, I'm shocked that you have repeated an argument that's in line with the senator's own views, but I guess, in terms of finding a solution, if it can't be the AG, right, and it can't be...
But I would argue that it is the AG anyway. We
Okay.
go to the AG very frequently. They are our primary consultant on matters of the law. And when we ask them for their opinion, I mean, yeah, I suppose we could decide not to follow it, but we would be doing that at significant peril to ourselves. So you can rest assured that we take the advice that we get from the Attorney General very seriously.
I think we're talking about two different things.
I don't think we are.
Give me a second, please. Advisory opinions are different than litigating enforcement actions, right? So what you're talking about is an advisory opinion. What I'm saying is, if somebody breaches their fiduciary duty under this, who sues to enforce it? That's a lawsuit, right? And so either the horde of, Lord of the Rings orc plaintiffs descends upon, the system, or the AG does it, or, I guess my question is, who else would be poised to do civil enforcement? Do we have prosecutorial agencies, maybe DAs, local level type stuff?
There are fiduciary standards elsewhere in Georgia statute. I can't remember if it's Title 50 or 51, but there are 53? Thank you. And those do contain the standards like prudent investor and whatnot. So that would be where any action would be taken, not under this, under Title 47.
Okay, and do we have evidence, does the AG enforce those actions currently, or who
You'd have to
enforces
ask-
those?
You would have to ask them that question.
Okay. He and I don't talk much. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to Google a couple things while the committee proceeds.
Sir?
I'm going to Google a couple things on my cell phone while the committee proceeds with this conversation. Thank you.
Go right ahead. Anyone else have any questions?
Do you have any comments? Oh, I said, do you have any other
So
comments, or-
I'm not an attorney, but you always hear that term conflicted out. So kind of what they're talking about, explain it to me, the Cliff Notes version, the simplified version. If the Attorney General is tasked with defending your fund, how do you, I understand the point they're making. Maybe you can explain it to me in a way I can understand it. I don't know.
What I would say to you is this. If I'm being honest with you, I think that legislation such as this might be redundant because of the fiduciary standards that are already in Georgia code. However, the idea has come up to say, okay, what is ERS doing specifically with respect to ESG and other types of non-pecuniary? The answer is it's encapsulated in our investment policy. Do I think it's a bad idea to put that into Georgia code? No, but if you're looking for causes of action, I think you look elsewhere in code besides Title 47 and this particular legislation.
I think what you've got to look at is that currently we are operating with an investment policy, which is pretty standard for the protocol for most retirement plans. They have a written investment policy. What we're doing, we're taking that policy and we are codifying it into law to say, really, I think it strengthens it, is my thought, is that we're saying you're gonna have a fiduciary responsibility and you can't invest in things that are, right or left. You need to look out for the retiree and their money and what the best and highest return is for them. And that's what I would call a prudent man policy. What would a financial advisor do for that group? And that's what this is doing, is codifying it and putting it into law and just kind of strengthening that portion.
And I completely support and agree with the intent of your legislation. Just curious about the issue that Senator Walker brought up. That's all. And maybe, like I said, I'm not an attorney, so maybe I'm worried about something that doesn't even exist, but it made sense to me.
Let me ask legislative counsel, just curious, is that you said, I think 51 addresses the fiduciary standards. What?
53.
53 addresses, there's a section of the code that addresses the fiduciary standards.
So that might be, there's a distinction, I believe, between fiduciary standards and the standards for a trustee.
Yeah.
And I believe the other provisions are more related to how the retirement systems are trustees enacting in the best interest of their members. Whereas the fiduciary standards are maybe a little bit higher or a little bit more clear. So I think there is a distinction there. They don't, to the extent they conflict, this would be more specific to the investment policies that we're talking about. The trustee provisions, I don't believe they speak to how the funds are invested, proxy votes, any of these types of things. They're more general. And as far as the cause of action, I'm not as fresh on judiciary, but and I know the things have been changing with mandamus actions, but I would think it would be possible to set up some kind of mandamus action to force the ERS to follow this law, but I don't see that in here.
Senator Davenport.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to turn it off. I think it was answered. I was just trying to figure out, trying to get my arms around, just trying to we really needed. Cause I thought we had it, I thought ERS took care of all of this for us. But, I guess I gotta understand, and I'm not sure about this call to action.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Google.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, you can actually call me Senator Legislative Council Hype Guy, because I think I agree with what you're saying to a point. I mean, just as relevant context, in the private securities context, we have a securities law code where you can bring a private cause of action to enforce, to litigate breaches of fiduciary duty if you're Merrill Lynch or something, right? But obviously this is a state actor, so it's a lot different. With state actors, to his point, you get this mandamus action, which is a fancy way of saying force the government to do something. And that's a lawsuit that's available to any citizen now. The only thing I worry about, sir, with the mandamus action is typically you can't bring it against a state actor that's acting in a discretionary capacity. So if they've been granted discretion to apply their authority a certain way, then you can't use the lawsuit because it's only for cases where they have a clear duty, right? So, I guess my question would be, do you have any experience, and I don't mean to needle you on this, but it'd be good to get some clarity. Has there been a mandamus action in the context of enforcing fiduciary duties by the state that you're aware of, or I'm just curious where you got that?
The mandamus action, it's just the only thing I could think of for
Sure.
a cause of action to bring against.
Against the state, yeah.
Yeah, without setting up a whole scheme for how individual beneficiaries can bring an action. And I don't know if that's ever happened, but, there is the duty of prudence trustee relationship that currently exists in Title 53. And, conflict of interest, impartiality, all these things. To your knowledge, have there been any actions brought against a retirement system for breaching that duty of being a trustee?
I won't speak for all retirement systems, but it hasn't happened to ERS that I'm aware of.
Well, and we may have a number of reasons why it hasn't happened. I mean, I think to the senator's point, it's unclear. So listen, and as a member of the minority, I've learned quite well how to kind of smoke the hookah, enjoy the philosophical discussion, and do pass. But I guess, this is an interesting point that I think we should stay aware of, is that when we create duties that we want to be enforced against state agencies, and we just put shall be liable for breach, but we don't answer the question who's doing the enforcement action, we might put ourselves in a sticky situation. I understand, you're in a position to say, well, who needs an enforcement action, right? But I mean, these are the questions that we've got to worry about if we're going to, again, create fiduciary duties. I mean, what is a duty if it can't be enforced is kind of the question I would leave to everybody. But thanks, Mr. Chairman.
I'm gonna ask a question. Take ESG out of it. What happens if you all make some really poor decisions? And, I know you won't, I'm just throwing it out there, and you put these people's retirement at risk. What cause of action is there today for
We
it?
probably get relieved of our duties.
Right, but
The
anybody
board
can
would
sue anybody, right?
Sure.
So there's not a cause of action today is that?
I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. If we make a calculation error, we end up having to, make up for that. We have to make the member whole. If there's a disagreement on interpretation of a particular provision in statute, then it gets litigated, and then we abide by the judge's decision beyond that. So there are civil cases that we are a part of from time to time because of disputes like that.
So can I ask one more question? And so if I'm asking a stupid question, forgive me, but, say that somebody else is sitting in your seat down the line and they willfully disregard this legislation. And currently, the Attorney General is supposed to be the person that's protecting these retirees, but at the same time, the Attorney General is protecting the fund. How do you connect that in?
I'm not the fund, right? The fund and the retirees are much more closely linked than I am linked to the fund. I'm the caretaker, am a caretaker of the fund. So if you want to think of the AG's job as in part to be another caretaker of the fund, then and again, the board would also have to, I mean, it would be very difficult for me to do that, what you're suggesting, because I'm accountable to a board of 7 and the legal apparatus of state government. And at some point, I would get called on that, and I wouldn't be in this job anymore.
Can I ask one more question, sir, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
So if it's the Attorney General's job to be the person that would enforce a cause of action, but at the same time, it's the Attorney General's job to defend your board,
To defend the fund and the board.
the fund, right? I'm just asking the question. If I'm crazy here, I'm sorry. I'm just,
Look, there's plenty of criminal statute out there if I embezzle or if I, misrepresent the financials or anything like that. There's plenty of criminal statute out there that would handle that, right? So yeah, somebody would have to defend me, but it wouldn't be the Attorney General. The Attorney General would bring that action on behalf of the fund, and I'd have to go find a private defense attorney, right? I'd be personally liable for stuff like that. If I'm willfully breaching my duties like that, we're not talking about my job per se. We're talking about, potential criminal activity here.
Okay. Senator?
You're sure that the Attorney General is not responsible for defense even in criminal cases involving state agencies?
If I'm named in a lawsuit by the individual who disputes the benefit calculation or something like that, then yes, they are responsible for defending the agency in that respect. If I am doing something that is, criminal in nature, embezzlement or whatever that is, it's not his job to defend me in that.
Is that based on any experience or legal interpretation? Or are you just saying that?
There's no experience. I haven't embezzled anything.
All right.
Let me
No,
just
but
state
that's,
that real
but
quick.
I mean, this is where,
Right.
this is testimony on a serious issue. I mean, I don't know that there's any evidence for you. I think you're just saying that, with respect. I think, I have
I'm
no
not a
idea.
lawyer.
Well, right. So, I mean, I think it's nice to say, well, the Attorney General should do this or should do that, but these guys are right. And I don't think we have an answer to this today. And that may just be something we kick the can on. But we really need to think about how we do enforcement against state agencies if the Attorney General's tasked with defending them. Anyway, that's the last I'll say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
if you willfully, we passed this legislation and you and your board and your money managers willfully disregarded the intent of the legislature, would that be criminal at that point?
That's not for me to say. I don't know the answer to that question.
Just let council have an answer on that.
I don't know. I know trustees are subject to removal.
And the investment advisors, which are more than just the 7 people, because y'all have got professional advisors handling part of the money. And what the essence of the bill was to try to eliminate anybody using that money for social purposes or any other. It's a highest use. And the issue that happened out in California, they had continually been investing in things that were not the highest return for their people. And that's happening around the country as far as that. West Virginia has done that. I actually had the chance to talk to their treasurer, and they were looking at the things that were being invested, because part of theirs was they have a big coal industry, and coal was in a negative light, and so there were investors pulling out of them, not highest return.
And I completely agree with you on everything you just said. I completely agree with that. The only thing that I'm having a hard time rectifying in my mind is how the Attorney General brings the cause of action and at the same time defends the state as well. That's the only thing I just don't.
And I don't.
Your intent of the bill, Senator, I'm with 100%.
And I don't know that this bill in the section of code that it's in really addresses that issue. That may be for a separate legislation, would be my guess from that standpoint. I'll look at Ledge Counsel and see if I can get him to.
Yeah,
and
I
I
would-
too.
I'll just say I would have to just dig a lot deeper into this and how trustees are currently handled. It shows like you can petition the court for removal of a trustee, and I need to really dig down into this. I would say that these provisions do apply statewide to all publicly funded retirement systems. So in that respect, there would be some value to having the state enforce the law here. For example, the Fulton County Teachers Retirement System plan. That would be subject to this as well, the retirement plan that's for the Atlanta City Police, things like that.
Thank you. Senator?
At the appropriate time, I would make a motion that we take affirmative positive action on the bill.
Now's the appropriate time.
No, we want the standards. I mean, the standards are good.
Standards are good.
The standards are good. It's just a question of whether they'll work. But yeah,
State your motion.
my motion is to take favorable action. Are we in a do pass posture? Or is this one of those funky bills where we have to jump through hoops? Let's just pass it. Do pass, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a do pass. Do we have a second? Going once? We have a second. Any other discussion?
Can I speak to it briefly?
Uh-huh.
In the greatest spiritual turnaround in terms of the mood of the committee that has ever been conducted, I think this is a good bill. I just want it to work, right? I want it to be strong enough to have an enforcement mechanism that actually works. Our problems are bigger than this bill when it comes to the Attorney General and potential conflicts of interest. I mean, that's why I brought up open records as another example. I think that the smart thing to do, and I believe you when you say we are bound by these standards and we don't want to lose our jobs. I think that that is compelling enough reason to try to conform to these standards and make good investment decisions. So notwithstanding that I was needling on how we enforce this stuff, I still think this is good legislation, and I want to explore the larger question of how we do conflict cases with the Attorney General comprehensively. But this is one more example to add to that ledger, but I'm still supportive of the bill, so that's why I made the motion.
Okay, well, you can alter that other bill.
That'd be great, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
So we have a motion by Senator McLaurin and a second by Senator Harrell. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried.
Thank you. I'll say this, Senator, thank you for your comments, because that's why we need lawyers. That's why we need farmers, because when we're talking together, it brings us together. Appreciate you. Thank you.
I might use that recording if that's why we need lawyers.
Don't take that too far.
No other meeting, business for this committee. Will stand adjourned. Thank All right,
No, man. I think they're,
we have unfinished business on Senator Walker's bill.
I don't think so, but we can wait on that, Mr. Chairman, to another day.
But we can go ahead and deal with it now if you'd like.
There's-
We just heard it, yeah, we heard it, just never voted to send it for study. And, research was indicating it was a duplicate of the one we heard today, 240, so I didn't know if you guys wanted to get clarity. But she said when she looked at it, it was, 105 and 206 were the same bill as 240, which we just passed.
All right, so Senator Walker, what is the bill that we heard? We heard 105, and
Should I give you an LC number probably?
It's right here.
LC 432600. This is Public School Employees Retirement System, the minimum and maximum allowable benefit multiplier for current and future retirees. And we did a hearing, and we thought it needed a fiscal note and actuary, and did it.
It does need a actuary, yes, sir.
So we need to hold a vote to send it to get an actuary.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Am I,
Well, we'll entertain a motion on that, Senate Bill 105 at this time.
so I make the motion to send it for actuarial study.
Okay. So we have a motion by Senator Walker. Can he make a motion on his own bill?
He's on committee, right?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Okay, there we go. Just want to make sure. Seconded by Senator McLaren. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? So carry. So do we need to do the same on 206?
No, sir, I don't think so.
Okay, just for clarification. Now, any other business before this committee? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.